Hey, it's April 13th, and we find ourselves in 1 Samuel chapters 18 through 20 and Psalm 11 and 59. Now, in the movie The Princess Bride, a grandfather tries to convince his sick grandson that the book he's about to read him is much better than the video games that he's been playing. When the grandson asks if there's any sports in the book, the grandfather responds, "Are you kidding? Fencing, fighting, torture, revenge, giants, monsters, chases, escapes, true love, miracles." And I'm thinking, that sounds a lot like the life of King David. As we'll see in today's passages, regardless of what craziness was going on in David's life, his love for God never changed. In the first 4 verses of chapter 18, Jonathan and David become the best of friends. In verse 5, it tells us that David is successful at whatever Saul gives him to do. So Saul puts David in command of the men of war, and everyone approves of Saul's decision, which makes Saul look good as well. However, in verses 6 through 30, Saul becomes jealous of David's success. When David is returning back from a war, the women come out singing in verse 7, and they're singing to one another as they celebrated. Saul has struck down his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. Well, Saul's not having it. And in verse 9, Saul eyed or became paranoid of David from that day on. In this passage, he tries to kill David twice. Then he sends him out as a commander of 1,000, presumably hoping that David would die in battle. But David has great success, and all of Israel and Judah love David. Saul's plan backfired. Saul tries to make David his son-in-law. And if David's his son-in-law, then he by default looks good. And so David marries Michal, Saul's daughter. Saul thinks that this will make David an even bigger target for the Philistines as well. After all, he's Israel's greatest hero and happens to be the son-in-law now of the king, which makes him a very tempting opportunity for the Philistines to display their superior power. However, David is even more successful against the Philistines than anybody else. Plans continue to backfire. In chapter 19, Saul tries to kill David outright. Tells his servants in verses 1 through 7 that they needed to kill David. Jonathan, being David's best friend, warns him and talks Saul out of killing David for now, and David is safe for the time being. But in verses 8 through 24, David's continued success makes Saul jealous again. Tries to spear David again while David was playing music for him, and this time David runs. Saul stakes out David's house to try and kill him, but his wife Michal warns David, and he escapes to Samuel in Ramah. Now we find out that it was during this time that David was inspired to write Psalm 59, where he cries out to God to protect him and asks that God would punish anyone, any nation, who plots evil. He acknowledges that God still sees what the wicked are doing, even though they think they're hiding it, and regardless of his circumstances, David would continue to praise God. In chapter 20, David comes back to ask Jonathan if Saul still wanted to kill him or if things had changed. Jonathan talks to Saul. Saul confirms that he still wants to kill David. David is warned by Jonathan, and David leaves. Psalm 11 is also part of our reading today. And in that psalm, David acknowledges that it is God who protects us and that God is always in control. God does allow bad things or difficult things to test the righteous, which we know from the book of James grows our faith. God does punish the wicked, and the righteous, no matter what happens in this life, look forward to seeing God in heaven. So, what can we take home from today's passage? Hopefully you've never experienced someone actually trying to kill you, but you have experienced others trying to harm you and bring evil against you in some way, shape, or form. Now, even when David's own life was in danger, he still trusted in God's protection, and he continued to worship God with his whole heart, no matter what. How about you? Can you worship God with your whole heart, regardless of life's circumstances? My prayer for us today is that we could be like David, worshiping God with all that we are, regardless of our present circumstances, knowing that it's our God who's in control of it all. If you haven't done so already, please download our Through the Bible reading at aspraycommunitychurch.org/throughthebible. And thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.